Blizzard have brought up an idea that could fundamentally change the way Wrath of the Lich King plays out towards the end of the expansion, even the later half of the expansion. Now, I'm not really here today to tell you if I think it's good or bad, but I'm going to tell you how it realistically affects us as players and what it really means. Before we start, I do want to mention really fast that channel memberships on the YouTube channel are now enabled, so you can click a link below to get access to exclusive content that I'm working on today and tomorrow, and I'm going to have multiple exclusive things coming out every month. So if you want to get all my Wrath UI, weak auras, add-ons, other things like that, and also a lot of tips and tricks I'm going to be releasing over there, or if you just want to support the channel. Anyways, let's dive right in. So it came out yesterday, and I technically already made a video on it, but yesterday was after a long stream that we're not really going to talk about. So what Blizzard announced is that they've been talking with the community council about a lot of changes they're trying to add to Wrath of the Lich King, or proposing to add to Wrath of the Lich King. Some of them are amazing, and some of them are definitely absolutely changing the fabric of the game. And today we're really going to focus on that one in particular. What it is, as you can see right here, an item level squish. What they're talking about is potentially squishing the item level of gear from Trial of the Crusader and Icecrown Citadel, basically making it weaker so that the old tier of content isn't necessarily pointless anymore. Now, how they're doing this is literally by bringing all the eye level of every new piece of gear down by 13, because as we move into the new raids or the new tier, everything moves up by 13. The idea here for Blizzard is that made it basically pointless for most players to go back into the last tier of raiding to get gear, because all of your new gear is a lot higher in eye level, so it's a lot higher in stats, and therefore generally a lot better. Now, this isn't a perfect one-to-one, because obviously things like trinkets or specific pieces that like influence the way you play the game, like a sigil or anything like that, always have much more of a weight than their actual just pure item level. But generally, it meant that for most people, it was pointless to go back into the old raids. Like when Black Temple came out, it wasn't too common to go back into SSC or TK because the gear is kind of a lot weaker now, other than a couple trinkets. It's not really the case when a tier has a legendary item though. We always saw throughout all of expansions like of Classic going back into Molten Core to farm Thunder Fury, or we always saw going back into Black Temple in the current phase to get glaives. But it did feel like you were sending in an entire raid group just to get the glaives for one person in your raid. So this will kind of change that, because everyone in the raid will still be able to get new gear that's at the same eye level or the same gear score or level equivalent to what you're getting in the normal mode of the new tier of raids. This is something that's actually kind of unique though to Wrath of the Lich King, because now each tier of raiding will have two different like levels of difficulty. Starting with Ulduar, we get hard modes, which give you better gear, and then moving into Trial of the Crusader, we have heroic, which also gives you even better gear than the normal mode. They did mention though, because they are locking heroic and normal modes together, that you can switch boss by boss to heroic or normal mode difficulty, as well as they're looking into potentially dropping more gear from Trial of the Crusader, which I think is really important, because you used to be able to run both 25-mans normal and heroic in 1 week. So having more gear drop as an adjustment for that is, I think, really key. So there's a ton of backlash yesterday when the idea of this all came out, and I do kind of want to touch on why the reasonings of that backlash are. A lot of people are upset because if your gear level actually goes down, if the gear you're getting in the later raids goes down, then you're a lot weaker in those later raids than you used to be. And this is mostly important for classes that scale extremely well at the end of the expansion. This is how it fundamentally changes, realistically, the end of the game. We all know that warriors become basically gods in ICC, even in Trial of the Crusader, as they hit armor pen cap. All of these classes that scale really well with gear are gonna see a huge nerf if they actually see that all of the gear they're getting in the later phases is just slightly weaker. This could make it a lot harder to hit those thresholds, like hit caps, haste caps, armor caps, all of those that are really key for different classes to change their specs, or also to just start performing really well. Other classes that scale well are like Ret Paladins, but really Fire Mages also, as they get more crit. Now with the new gear, they're gonna have less of that crit, so it could make these specs a lot less viable, and you could actually see a lot of the meta of the early game in the expansion maintaining all the way throughout the end game of this expansion, which is not necessarily what we've ever seen before. Now that's mostly why people are upset realistically, but some of the reasons that are really exciting for this eye level squish is no longer do we have to go back to old content, of course, and just farm one person's item. We're gonna be able to still go back into Ulduar, which is a really fun raid realistically, and Trial of the Crusader is only gonna take you like an hour to clear, so you're gonna go back into Ulduar and actually still get real gear. You can obviously go back for achievements and mounts. Then the next thing that's really nice is it buffs the difficulty of the next raids, and that's something that we've seen classic players kind of be more outspoken about, is how they always want more difficulty. Although when Season of Mastery took away world buffs and added more quote-unquote difficulty, a lot of people actually did not like that at all. In my eyes though, they kind of did just make fights a lot longer, not necessarily make them harder. So we'll have to see how this actually affects the realistic difficulty of Ice Crown Citadel and the hard modes as well. Blizzard's other reasonings are that they want to give Ulduar time to breathe because it's such an iconic actual raid. A lot of people didn't get to experience it for so long because there was a bridge in between Ulduar and ICC with this like mini raid that was Trial of the Crusader. And it also did cut season 7 of the actual arena season short. So this is really nice for PvPers, although PvP gear also is going to get a stat squish and an eye level drop between the seasons. So it doesn't make it as powerful. It might change the meta within PvP. I'm not completely sure about that, but it definitely could see some things. Also, they really wanted to curve any bit of actual scaling with massive eye level jumps because a lot of classes obviously get crazy powerful. This might need them to adjust a little bit of the classes, but we also moved into raids like Sunwell Plateau and were able to do ridiculous amounts of damage early on, and they had to add a debuff in the raid, Sunwell Radiance, just to make the actual raid harder for us because druids apparently were able to hit like 100% dodge with the new gear before they added a 30% dodge reduction with the Sunwell Radiance debuff. So this is kind of to reduce power creep, which is absolutely a thing we see at the end of every expansion. But one thing that brings up a huge question is how does this nerf items, in particular like legendaries, and what I really mean is obviously gonna be Shadowmourne. One, it obviously hugely buffs Valinir no matter what, because Valinir is now a higher eye level than everything else that's getting squished down, because they did not mention that they were going to squish anything in Ulduar. But do they have to squish the actual eye level and gear scaling of the weapon Shadowmourne itself? This also means they need to look into squishing anything like procs and trinkets. If they don't, that means this legendary weapon is that much stronger. No one will be able to compete with anyone using this weapon, and it becomes a lot more contested. I'm sure a lot of people want to know how Blizzard is planning to deal with this if they are going to actually implement these changes. But again, guys, know this is just something that they are bringing up and trying to field how the community feels about it. So let me know in the comments what you think about this eye level squish, if you think it is beneficial for the game, if you like the idea of making the raids harder, or if you think it hurts because it nerfs particular classes that need this power level scaling. And I plan to write something to the WoW Community Council to hopefully be brought up. So if you guys have really good ideas, please again leave them in the comments. I am going to mention before I leave that I am going to do another giveaway once we hit 30k subs on the channel, and that will be another giveaway of the level 70 boost, so a free level 70 boosted character coming with the pre-patch in a few days. And if we ever reach that, I'm going to give that away, so make sure to subarino. I'm so cheesy early in the morning. Anyways, guys, I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll see you all on the next one.